The man on the corner. It was a chilly morning when Alina first noticed the beggar sitting on the corner of Elm Street. She had walked past him countless times on her way to work, but today was different. He wasn't alone. Surrounding him were four scruffy, wide-eyed dogs, their tails wagging furiously as he doled out pieces of bread from a modest loaf. Alina paused for a moment, intrigued by the unusual sight. The man looked to be in his early 40s, his face weathered but kind, his blue eyes shining despite his circumstances. His clothes were old and patched, but he had a certain dignity about him. The dogs seemed to adore him, and he treated them with a tenderness that Alina found unusual in someone struggling to survive. Curiosity got the better of her, and she approached him. "Excuse me," she began tentatively. "I couldn't help but notice. These dogs, they're always with you. Are they yours?" The man looked up, a gentle smile spreading across his face. "Oh, they're not mine, ma'am. They're just friends who found me." "Friends?" Alina repeated, confused. "That's right," he said, patting the largest dog, a shaggy golden retriever mix, on the head. "Each of them came to me looking for food or shelter, and I couldn't turn them away. They've stuck with me ever since." Alina's curiosity deepened. She couldn't fathom how a man with so little could take on the responsibility of caring for so many animals. She glanced down at the golden retriever mix, who wagged its tail and gave a friendly bark. "What's his name?" she asked. "This one's Max," the man replied. "And that's Bella, Rusty, and Daisy." He gestured to the other dogs, each of whom seemed equally content to be in his company. "I'm Alina," she said, extending a hand. "Dean," the man replied, shaking her hand. "Nice to meet you, Alina." Dean's story began to unravel as they spoke. He had once been a carpenter, running his own small business in a nearby town. Life had been good. He wasn't rich, but he was happy. Then, a string of bad luck had struck. A fire destroyed his workshop, leaving him without a livelihood. Insurance complications dragged on for months, and the little savings he had dwindled quickly. He tried to rebuild, but nothing seemed to go right. Eventually, he found himself on the streets, a place he never imagined he'd be. "It's not the life I planned for," Dean admitted, his voice tinged with sadness. "But I've learned to make the best of it. These dogs, they've been my companions. They give me purpose." Alina was captivated by his resilience. Here was a man who had every reason to give up, yet he had found a way to bring light into his life and the lives of others, even if those others were stray dogs. Before she left, she handed Dean a $5 bill and promised to check in on him again. Over the next few days, Alina couldn't stop thinking about Dean and his pack of dogs. She started bringing them small bags of dog food and snacks. Each time she visited, she learned a little more about Dean's life and his philosophy. "People think I'm crazy for taking care of them," Dean said one afternoon as he stroked Bella's head. "But they don't understand. These dogs, they've saved me just as much as I've saved them." "How so?" Alina asked, intrigued. "When I first ended up out here, I was lost," Dean explained. "I felt invisible, like I didn't matter to anyone. Then one day, this little guy showed up." He gestured to Max. "He was just a pup back then, scrawny and scared. I shared my sandwich with him, and he never left. Taking care of him gave me something to wake up for, something to fight for. The others came later, one by one, and now I've got this little family." Alina was moved by his words. It was clear that Dean's kindness wasn't limited to the dogs. He had a generous spirit that shone through despite his hardships. She began visiting him regularly, bringing supplies and even helping him find resources to care for the dogs. In turn, Dean's story began to spread through the neighborhood. People started stopping by to meet the man who had become a local legend. Some brought food for the dogs. Others left money or supplies. Dean's Corner became a small hub of compassion and community, with the dogs serving as a bridge between him and the people who once walked past without a second glance. One evening, Elena found Dean sitting quietly with his pack, the setting sun casting a warm glow over the scene. She sat down beside him and asked, "If you could have anything in the world, what would it be?" Dean thought for a moment before answering. "I'd like to give these dogs a proper home," he said. "A place where they can run and play, where they don't have to worry about the cold or where their next meal is coming from. They deserve that." Elena felt a lump form in her throat. Dean's selflessness was inspiring, and she resolved to do something to help him. As she left that evening, an idea began to take shape in her mind. She didn't know exactly how, but she was determined to make Dean's dream a reality. Little did Dean know, his story was about to take an extraordinary turn, one that would change his life and the lives of his beloved dogs forever. The ripple effect. As winter deepened, Dean's corner on Elm Street became a beacon of warmth and kindness. Every day, the sight of him surrounded by his ever-growing pack of stray dogs drew curious glances and hesitant smiles from passers-by. For many, he was a mystery, a man with so little, yet capable of so much compassion. Among those intrigued was a young journalist named Mia Martinez. Mia was new to the neighborhood, having moved to the city to pursue her dream job at the local newspaper. She first noticed Dean during one of her morning commutes, captivated by the scene of a man in tattered clothes laughing as a scruffy terrier pawed at his knee. Over the next week, she watched as other pedestrians paused to interact with Dean, offering him food, money, or simply a kind word. The dogs always seemed to brighten at the attention, tails wagging enthusiastically. It wasn't long before Maya's curiosity turned into professional interest. She approached Dean one crisp afternoon, her notepad and pen in hand. "Hi there," she said with a friendly smile. "My name's Mia. I'm a journalist, and I couldn't help but notice the unique bond you have with these dogs. Would you mind if I ask you a few questions?" Dean looked up from where he was petting Bella, his most recent rescue, and gave a small shrug. "Sure, why not? Not much else to do out here." Over the next hour, Dean recounted his journey from carpenter to caretaker of strays, sparing no detail. He spoke of Max, the first dog to find him, and how the simple act of feeding a hungry pup had led to an unbreakable friendship. He shared stories of each dog's arrival, from Rusty's matted fur and timid demeanor to Daisy's boisterous energy that hid her deep scars from a hard life on the streets. "It's not just about feeding them," Dean explained, his voice soft but steady. "It's about giving them a little bit of love and dignity. These dogs, they've been through things we can't even imagine. And they still show up every day, wagging their tails, ready to forgive the world. They've taught me a lot." Mia's pen flew across her notepad as Dean spoke, her heart aching and swelling in equal measure. She had expected an interesting human interest story, but what she found was a testament to resilience and kindness in the face of adversity. "Dean," she began, "I've been thinking. With all the attention your story has gotten, maybe we could start a fundraiser to get you and the dogs off the streets. What do you think?" Dean was taken aback. "I don't know, Elena. I'm grateful for everything people have done, but I'm not sure if I deserve more than this corner." "Of course you do," Elena insisted. "This isn't just about you. It's about these dogs and the message you've shared. People want to help, Dean. Let them." After some persuasion, Dean agreed, and Elena wasted no time. She set up an online fundraiser with Mia's help, sharing Dean's story and the impact he'd had on the neighborhood. Within days, donations began flooding in from across the country. The goal was modest at first, enough to rent a small shelter for Dean and the dogs, but the overwhelming response far exceeded expectations. A new chapter. By the end of the month, the fundraiser had raised enough money to secure a piece of land on the outskirts of town. The property included a small house for Dean and ample space for the dogs to roam freely. Volunteers came together to build kennels, a play area, and even a small clinic for the dogs' medical needs. When Dean and his pack finally moved into their new home, the entire neighborhood came to celebrate. There were tears, laughter, and plenty of wagging tails as Dean stood in the doorway of his modest house, overwhelmed by the support of the community. "I don't have the words to thank you all," he said, his voice cracking with emotion. "You've given me and these dogs a second chance. I promise to make the most of it." As the sun set that evening, Dean sat on the porch, surrounded by his dogs, watching as children played in the yard and neighbors mingled. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of belonging, a feeling that perhaps he and his dogs had finally found a place to call home. Little did he know, his story was far from over. The love and kindness he had shown to a few stray dogs had sparked a movement, and the ripple effects of his actions were just beginning to unfold. Building a haven. Dean woke up to the sound of birds chirping, a sound he hadn't truly appreciated in years. For once, the air felt different, not burdened with the chill of uncertainty, but filled with a warmth he could only describe as hope. He stepped outside onto the modest porch of his new home, greeted by the sight of his dogs exploring their spacious yard. Max trotted over, wagging his tail, and nudged Dean's hand with his wet nose. "Good morning, buddy," Dean said, crouching down to scratch Max behind the ears. The other dogs soon joined in, bounding up to him for their morning affection. It was a scene Dean could have never imagined a few months ago. He had gone from sleeping on a cold sidewalk to having a place to call home, all thanks to the generosity of strangers and the community that had rallied around him. The land they had secured wasn't just a home for Dean. It was quickly becoming a sanctuary for the many stray dogs that still wandered the streets. Volunteers came regularly to help build additional shelters and clear space for the dogs to play. The local veterinarian, Dr. Emily Harper, visited weekly to ensure all the animals were healthy and vaccinated. The dream of giving these dogs a safe haven was becoming a reality. The strays keep coming. As word spread about Dean's newfound shelter, more stray dogs began showing up. Some were brought by well-meaning neighbors who had found them wandering the streets. Others seemed to find their way to the sanctuary on their own, as if guided by some unseen force. Each new arrival tugged at Dean's heart. One particularly cold evening, Dean heard a faint whining outside his window. When he stepped out to investigate, he found a small, shivering puppy huddled near the fence. The pup's fur was matted, and it looked as though it hadn't eaten in days. Dean scooped it up gently and brought it inside. "You're safe now," he whispered, wrapping the pup in a warm blanket. He named her Hope, a reminder of the promise he had made to himself and the animals he cared for. Hope quickly became a symbol of the sanctuary's mission. Her transformation from a frightened, malnourished stray to a playful, energetic puppy mirrored the sanctuary's journey. The dog's resilience inspired Dean every day to keep pushing forward, even when the challenges seemed insurmountable. Growing pains. Running a shelter was no small feat, and Dean quickly realized the enormity of the task. The donations, while generous, could only stretch so far. Food, medical supplies, and upkeep for the property were constant expenses. Dean spent his days caring for the dogs and his nights brainstorming ways to keep the sanctuary sustainable. "We need to think long-term," Alina said one afternoon as she helped Dean clean out the kennels. "What about hosting events? Adoption fairs, fundraisers, maybe even community dog training classes?" Dean nodded thoughtfully. "That's a good idea. The more we can involve the community, the better." Alina and Mia worked tirelessly to help Dean organize the first event, an open house at the sanctuary. They spread the word through social media, local newspapers, and flyers distributed around town. The goal was to raise awareness about the sanctuary and find homes for some of the adoptable dogs. The open house. The day of the open house arrived, and the sanctuary buzzed with activity. Families, dog lovers, and curious neighbors streamed in, eager to see the haven they had heard so much about. The dogs, sensing the excitement, wagged their tails and barked happily as they greeted the visitors. Dean stood at the entrance, welcoming each guest with a warm smile. He was nervous but hopeful. This was a chance to not only showcase the sanctuary, but also to share the stories of the dogs who called it home. "This is Bella," he said, introducing a young girl to the playful terrier. "She's full of energy and loves to play fetch. I think she'd do great with a family like yours." The girl's eyes lit up as Bella licked her hand. "Mom, can we keep her?" she asked excitedly. By the end of the day, several dogs had found new homes, and the sanctuary had received generous donations from visitors who were moved by Dean's story. The success of the event bolstered Dean's confidence and reinforced the importance of community involvement. A glimmer of recognition. As the sanctuary grew, so did its reach. Local news stations picked up on the story, and Dean was invited to share his journey on a morning talk show. Nervous but determined, he sat before the cameras and recounted the events that had led him to this moment. "It's not about me," Dean said during the interview. "It's about them, the dogs. They taught me more about love, forgiveness, and resilience than I ever thought possible. I'm just trying to give back what they've given me." The segment aired to widespread acclaim, and donations began pouring in from viewers who were touched by Dean's humility and dedication. Some even traveled from out of state to visit the sanctuary and volunteer their time. A hopeful future. With the influx of support, Dean was able to expand the sanctuary further. He added more kennels, improved the play area, and even started a small training program to help rehabilitate dogs with behavioral issues. Volunteers became a regular presence, each bringing their unique skills and passion to the cause. Dean's life had transformed in ways he could never have imagined. What had started as a desperate attempt to survive had turned into a mission of compassion and community. Every wagging tail, every adoption, and every new arrival was a testament to the power of kindness and the ripple effect of one man's determination to make a difference. As he sat on the porch one evening, watching Hope play with the other dogs, Dean felt a profound sense of gratitude. He had been given a second chance, and he intended to make the most of it. The sanctuary was more than a place for stray dogs. It was a beacon of hope for anyone who had ever felt lost or forgotten. And Dean knew, deep in his heart, that this was only the beginning. Trials and triumphs. The sanctuary buzzed with life as Dean's dogs explored their ever-expanding haven. Yet as the days passed, new challenges emerged, ones that tested the resolve of Dean and the community that rallied behind him. It started with an unexpected surge in the number of strays being brought to the sanctuary. News of Dean's work had spread far beyond the city, and people began arriving from nearby towns and even farther afield, seeking refuge for animals they could no longer care for. While Dean's heart ached to help every dog, the growing numbers put immense strain on the sanctuary's resources. "Dean, we're running low on food again," Alina said one morning, holding up an almost empty bag of kibble. "We've had 20 new arrivals this week alone." Dean sighed, looking out at the yard where the dogs played. "We'll figure something out," he said, though the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on his shoulders. Facing adversity. The growing strain wasn't just financial. With more dogs came more complex health issues. Some arrived with severe injuries or illnesses, requiring immediate medical attention. Dr. Emily Harper, the veterinarian who had been volunteering her time, was doing everything she could, but the cases were piling up. "Dean, we need more help," she said one evening after treating a dog with a deep wound. "I can't keep up with this pace on my own." Dean nodded, his mind racing. He reached out to animal welfare organizations and local veterinary clinics, hoping to secure additional support. Slowly, volunteers with veterinary experience began to trickle in, easing some of the burden. Still, the sheer number of animals needing care remained daunting. Adding to the pressure, complaints started coming in from a small but vocal group of neighbors. While many in the community supported the sanctuary, others saw it as a nuisance. They complained about noise from the dogs and the increased traffic in the area. One afternoon, Dean found himself face to face with Mr. Peterson, a longtime resident who lived just down the road. "You're disrupting the peace," Mr. Peterson said, his tone sharp. "This neighborhood wasn't meant for this kind of operation. You need to move somewhere else." Dean's stomach sank. He had worked so hard to build this sanctuary. but now it felt like everything was hanging by a thread. "I'm doing my best to keep things under control," he said, trying to remain calm. "These dogs deserve a chance." But Mr. Peterson was unmoved. "They're not my responsibility," he said before storming off. The community steps in. News of the conflict spread quickly, and the sanctuary's supporters rallied to Dean's defense. Mia Martins wrote a follow-up article highlighting the sanctuary's positive impact on the community and the lives it had saved. Social media campaigns sprang up, urging people to show their support for Dean and his work. The outpouring of kindness was overwhelming. Volunteers organized a neighborhood cleanup to address concerns about noise and traffic, while local businesses donated soundproof fencing to help minimize disturbances. Supporters even started a petition to ensure the sanctuary's right to operate in the area, gathering hundreds of signatures in just a few days. One of the most touching moments came when a group of children from a nearby school presented Dean with a banner they had made, reading, "Thank you, Dean, for saving our furry friends." Tears welled up in his eyes as he accepted the gift, his faith in the goodness of people reaffirmed. A life-saving mission. Amid these challenges, Dean's dedication to the dogs never wavered. He worked tirelessly, often sacrificing sleep to ensure every animal received the care and attention they needed. The sanctuary had become more than a shelter. It was a lifeline for strays who might otherwise have been forgotten. One night, as Dean was preparing to turn in, he heard frantic barking from the yard. Rushing outside, he found Max and Rusty circling a small figure at the edge of the property. As he approached, he saw it was a dog, thin, trembling, and barely able to stand. Dean knelt down, his heart breaking at the sight. "It's okay," he whispered, gently scooping the dog into his arms. "You're safe now." The dog, whom he later named Chance, was in critical condition. Dr. Harper and her team worked through the night to stabilize him. And against all odds, Chance began to recover. His story became a symbol of the sanctuary's mission, reminding everyone why they fought so hard to keep it alive. A new beginning. As the weeks turned into months, the sanctuary continued to grow and adapt. Dean partnered with local organizations to launch an adoption program, finding loving homes for many of the dogs. Each adoption was a bittersweet moment for Dean, but he took comfort in knowing these animals would finally have the lives they deserved. The sanctuary also began offering educational programs for schools and community groups, teaching people about the importance of animal welfare and responsible pet ownership. These efforts not only raised awareness, but also helped foster a deeper connection between the sanctuary and the community. Despite the challenges, Dean remained steadfast in his mission. The sanctuary was no longer just a place for stray dogs. It had become a symbol of hope, resilience, and the transformative power of compassion. One evening, as Dean sat on the porch watching the dogs play, Alina joined him. "You've done something incredible here," she said, her voice filled with admiration. "I hope you know that." Dean smiled, his gaze fixed on the yard. "It's not just me," he said. "It's everyone who believed in this place. These dogs, they've given me more than I could ever give them." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the sanctuary, Dean felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The trials he had faced had only strengthened his resolve, and he knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, he and his dogs would face them together. The unexpected ally. As Dean's sanctuary continued to grow, so did its challenges. Donations, while steady, were sometimes insufficient to cover the increasing needs of the ever-expanding number of dogs. Despite the progress they had made, Dean knew they needed a long-term solution to ensure the sanctuary's survival. One crisp autumn morning, as Dean was setting out food for the dogs, a sleek black car pulled into the gravel driveway. Dean watched curiously as a sharply dressed woman stepped out, clutching the leather briefcase. She looked out of place among the modest surroundings of the sanctuary. "Good morning," she said, approaching him with a confident stride. "Are you Dean Carter?" Dean nodded, brushing his hands on his jeans. "That's me. Can I help you?" "My name is Vanessa Harrington." she said, extending her hand. "I'm a corporate lawyer for Harrington and Co., but I'm also an animal lover. I read about your sanctuary in the paper and wanted to see it for myself." Dean shook her hand, still unsure of her intentions. "Nice to meet you, Vanessa. Feel free to look around." Vanessa's gaze softened as she observed the dogs playing in the yard. "You've created something incredible here, Dean," she said, "but I'm guessing you're facing some serious challenges." Dean sighed, his guard lowering slightly. "We are. It's tough keeping up with the costs and demands, but I can't turn these dogs away. They deserve a chance." Vanessa nodded thoughtfully. "I want to help," she said, "not just with donations, but by creating a sustainable future for your sanctuary." A new partnership. Over the following weeks, Vanessa became a regular presence at the sanctuary. She worked closely with Dean and Elena, reviewing the sanctuary's finances and operations. Vanessa's expertise proved invaluable. She proposed a plan to turn the sanctuary into a nonprofit organization, which would open up opportunities for grants, tax benefits, and corporate sponsorships. With this structure, Vanessa explained during one of their meetings, you'll have access to resources that can help you expand without constantly worrying about funding. We can also create programs that involve the community more directly, like adoption drives and educational workshops. Dean was initially hesitant. The idea of turning his passion into a formal organization felt overwhelming. But Vanessa's confidence and dedication reassured him. With her guidance, they filed the necessary paperwork, and within months, the sanctuary was officially recognized as a nonprofit. The gala. To celebrate the sanctuary's new status and raise additional funds, Vanessa proposed hosting a fundraising gala. The idea seemed daunting to Dean, but Elena and Mia were immediately on board. They saw it as an opportunity to showcase the sanctuary's impact and rally even more support. Preparations for the gala took weeks. Volunteers transformed an old barn on the property into an elegant venue, stringing lights and setting up tables decorated with photos of the sanctuary's success stories. Local businesses donated food, drinks, and raffle prizes, while supporters pitched in to spread the word. When the night of the gala arrived, Dean couldn't believe his eyes. The barn was filled with people, neighbors, local officials, and even some of the sanctuary's adopters, who brought along their dogs to show how far they had come. Dean felt a mix of pride and humility as he took the stage to thank everyone for their support. "When I started this journey," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I never imagined it would lead to this. This sanctuary isn't just about saving dogs. It's about showing what compassion and community can achieve. Thank you for believing in us." The gala raised more than they had hoped, securing enough funds to cover the sanctuary's needs for the next year. But more importantly, it brought the community closer together, solidifying their commitment to the sanctuary's mission. A moment of reflection. In the weeks following the gala, Dean found himself reflecting on how far they had come. He thought back to the days when he had nothing but the clothes on his back and Max by his side. Now he was part of something bigger than himself, a movement that had given countless animals a second chance and inspired people to look out for one another. One afternoon, as Dean was repairing a section of the fence, Vanessa approached him with a clipboard in hand. "We've got an offer," she said, handing him a letter. "A local tech company wants to sponsor the sanctuary. They're impressed with what you've built and want to be part of it." Dean read the letter, his eyes widening. The sponsorship would provide a steady stream of funding, allowing them to expand their facilities and take in even more dogs. "This is incredible," Dean said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know how to thank you, Vanessa." "You don't have to," she replied with a smile. "Just keep doing what you're doing. The future beckons." With the sponsorship secured, the sanctuary entered a new chapter. They built additional kennels, improved their medical facilities, and even started a foster program to help dogs transition into permanent homes. Dean's vision was becoming a reality, and the sanctuary's impact continued to grow. But for Dean, the heart of the sanctuary remained the same. Each morning, He still woke up to the sound of dogs barking and birds chirping. He still greeted Max, Bella, Rusty, and the others with the same love and care as when it all began. And he still believed that every life, no matter how small or forgotten, deserved a chance to thrive. As he stood on the porch one evening, watching the sun set over the sanctuary, Dean felt a profound sense of peace. The road ahead was still uncertain, but with the support of his community and the unwavering loyalty of his dogs, he knew they could face anything together. "We've come a long way, haven't we, Max?" Dean said, scratching the dog's ears. Max wagged his tail in agreement, as if to say, "And we're just getting started." The legacy of hope. The sanctuary thrived under its new nonprofit status, becoming a pillar of the community and a beacon for animal welfare. Dean's days were still long and demanding, but the sanctuary's growth brought a renewed sense of purpose. It wasn't just about saving dogs anymore. It was about creating a legacy of compassion and resilience. An unforgettable visitor. One rainy afternoon, Dean was going over adoption paperwork when Alina rushed into the office, her face glowing with excitement. "Dean, you're not going to believe this," she said. "There's someone here to see you." And they brought cameras. Dean frowned, confused. "Cameras? Come on," Alina urged, grabbing his arm and pulling him toward the yard. Standing near the sanctuary's entrance was a television crew, their equipment gleaming despite the drizzle. At their center was a man Dean immediately recognized, Joshua Crane, a popular host of a national animal rescue show. Dean froze, unsure how to process the moment. "You must be Dean Carter," Joshua said, extending his hand. "I've heard a lot about what you're doing here, and I wanted to see it for myself." Dean shook his hand, still stunned. "I'm honored," he said. "But how did you even hear about us?" Joshua smiled. "Word travels fast when you're doing something extraordinary. We're featuring sanctuaries that are making a difference, and yours stood out. If you're willing, we'd like to share your story with our audience." Over the next few days, the crew filmed every aspect of the sanctuary, from Dean's morning routine to the heartwarming moments of adoptions. They interviewed volunteers, adopters, and even the children who had come to love the sanctuary as a second home. Dean's initial nerves gave way to pride as he watched the crew capture the essence of what the sanctuary had become. When the episode aired weeks later, the response was overwhelming. Donations flooded in from across the country, and adoption inquiries soared. Dean's story resonated with people from all walks of life, inspiring them to support their local shelters or even start their own initiatives. The ripple effect. The national attention brought new opportunities. A well-known pet food company offered a sponsorship deal, ensuring the sanctuary would never have to worry about feeding its residents again. Local businesses followed suit, providing supplies and services at no cost. Even the city council took notice, granting the sanctuary additional land to expand its facilities. With these resources, Dean and his team launched new programs, including free spay and neuter clinics and educational workshops for pet owners. They also established a volunteer program for at-risk youth, giving them the chance to work with the dogs and learn valuable life skills. One of the most rewarding moments came when a young boy named Marcus, who had been struggling in school, started volunteering at the sanctuary. At first, he was quiet and withdrawn, but over time, he opened up, forming a special bond with a shy Labrador mix named Willow. Working with Willow helped Marcus gain confidence, and he began excelling in his studies. His mother, tearful with gratitude, credited the sanctuary for changing her son's life. A difficult goodbye. Even as the sanctuary flourished, there were moments of heartbreak. One evening, Max, the dog who had been with Dean from the very beginning, fell seriously ill. Despite the best efforts of Dr. Harper and her team, Max's condition worsened. Dean stayed by his side, stroking his fur and whispering words of comfort. "You've been my rock," Dean said, his voice breaking. "I wouldn't have made it without you." When Max passed away, the entire sanctuary mourned. Dean held a small memorial service, burying Max under a large oak tree on the property. He placed a simple plaque that read, "Max, the first, the brave, the beloved." Though the loss was profound, Dean found solace in the legacy Max had left behind. The sanctuary itself was a testament to their bond, a place where countless other dogs could find the love and care that Max had inspired. Passing the torch, years passed, and the sanctuary's impact only grew. Dean, now in his late 50s, began thinking about the future. He knew the sanctuary needed a leader who could carry its mission forward. Elena, who had been with him from the start, had become an indispensable part of the sanctuary. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the dogs play, Dean turned to her. "Elena, I think it's time," he said. "You've got the passion and the vision to take this place to the next level. I want you to lead the sanctuary." Elena's eyes widened. "Dean, I don't know if I can fill your shoes." "You don't have to," Dean said with a smile. "Just keep walking the path we've built together." After much thought, Elena agreed. Dean began transitioning leadership, guiding her through every aspect of running the sanctuary. When the day came for him to step back, the community gathered to celebrate his contributions and wish him well. A new chapter. Though Dean no longer ran the day-to-day operations, he remained a fixture at the sanctuary, offering guidance and sharing stories with visitors. He spent his mornings under the oak tree where Max rested, reflecting on the journey that had brought him from a lonely street corner to a thriving sanctuary filled with love and hope. The sanctuary's work continued to inspire. Dean's story became a case study in resilience, proving that one person's compassion could create ripples that changed the lives of many. Schools, organizations, and even other shelters looked to the sanctuary as a model for what could be achieved through community and determination. As the sun set on another day, Dean sat on the porch with Willow at his feet, a new generation of dogs playing in the yard. He felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that the sanctuary would continue to thrive long after he was gone. "We did it, Max," he murmured, looking toward the oak tree. "We really did it."